Elena had always been a quiet girl, her eyes often cast downward, her words few and carefully chosen. Those who knew her thought she was simply shy, but close friends sensed there was more to her silence. Despite her reserved nature, she radiated a quiet strength and intelligence. Yet, something held her back, something that made her flinch at loud noises and shy away from touch. The reality of Elena's life at home was a painful secret she held inside. From a young age, she had endured the unthinkable. Her father, a man respected in their small community, had been manipulating and abusing her for years. To outsiders, he was a model citizen, a man who volunteered at the local shelter, attended church, and kept a well-manicured lawn. Inside the walls of their home, however, he was a predator who used fear and manipulation to keep her silent. For years, Elena thought she could endure it alone. Her father had made her believe that no one would understand, that if she spoke out, people would turn against her, calling her a liar and tearing her family apart. The weight of his threats loomed over her, keeping her trapped in a cycle of fear and shame. But one day, something shifted. Elena was sitting in her high school's library, reading an article about a young woman who had bravely spoken out about the abuse she had suffered. The article mentioned how her community rallied around her, offering support and helping her find justice. As Elena read, she felt a spark of hope. She realized she wasn't alone, that there were others who had faced the same darkness and had managed to escape it. Elena sat alone in the dimly lit school library, the muffled hum of distant voices fading into the background as she turned the pages of the article. Her eyes lingered on the photo of a young woman, not much older than herself, who had found the courage to speak up about her experiences with abuse. The girl's story was heart-wrenching, but her resilience shone through, radiating a strength that felt almost foreign to Elena. As she read, she couldn't shake a feeling that rose within her, a mix of hope, fear, and longing. She wanted that strength for herself, the strength to break free from the silence that had bound her for so long. Her hands trembled as she closed the magazine. Her father's words echoed in her mind, "No one would believe you," he had said. "If you told anyone, they'd think you were lying. You'd ruin our family." For years, those words had been her reality. She believed that silence was her only option, that the pain was hers alone to bear. But now, for the first time, she began to wonder if it didn't have to be that way. The thought terrified her, and she struggled to breathe as she imagined what it would mean to tell someone. What if he was right? What if they didn't believe her? She felt the weight of doubt press against her, but the image of the girl in the article lingered, like a tiny flame in the darkness of her mind. The days that followed were filled with a quiet turmoil. Elena couldn't stop thinking about the article, and her mind began to drift during classes, her concentration slipping as her thoughts turned inward. She started to imagine a life without her father's shadow looming over her, a life where she could be free. But each time she allowed herself to hope, guilt and fear surged up, threatening to drown her. One afternoon, as she was walking down the hall after class, she passed the door to the school counselor's office. She had never been inside. She'd always thought that her problems were hers alone, too big and too shameful to share with anyone else. But today, she stopped and stared at the door, her heartbeat thundering in her ears. Could she really do it? Could she say the words out loud? Before she knew it, she was walking toward the door, her feet moving as if by some unseen force. Her hand shook as she reached for the doorknob, her mind screaming at her to turn back, to bury her secrets and continue on as she always had. But the image of that girl from the magazine came to her again, a vision of resilience that bolstered her courage. Taking a deep breath, she knocked softly on the door. The counselor, Miss Thompson, opened it and greeted her with a warm smile. "Elena. Come on in," she said, her voice calm and welcoming. Elena nodded, barely able to manage a small smile as she stepped into the office, her body tense and her heart racing. Miss Thompson gestured for her to sit, and Elena sank into the chair, gripping the edges of the seat so tightly her knuckles turned white. She wanted to speak, but her throat felt tight, as if every word was trapped. The counselor waited patiently, her eyes kind and attentive, sensing that Elena had something important to say. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Elena found her voice. I wanted to talk about something, she whispered, her gaze fixed on a small plant on the windowsill. She couldn't bring herself to look at Miss Thompson, afraid of what she might see in her expression. It's something that's been happening for a long time, and I didn't know who to tell. The counselor's expression softened. It's okay, Elena, she said gently. You can take your time. Whatever it is, I'm here to listen. Those words were like a lifeline. Elena took a shaky breath and began to speak, her voice barely audible at first. She recounted memories that she had buried deep inside, memories that she had tried to forget but that had haunted her in the quiet moments of her life. The words stumbled out in fragments, each one feeling heavier than the last, and tears began to blur her vision. She didn't stop to wipe them away, she couldn't bear to lose the momentum that had taken so much effort to build. As she spoke, she felt the weight of years of silence lifting from her shoulders. It was painful, each word like tearing off a bandage that had been there too long, but with every sentence, she felt a strange lightness, a fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, she could be free. Miss Thompson listened with unwavering patience, never interrupting or pressing her. When Elena finally fell silent, exhausted and drained, Miss Thompson leaned forward, her voice gentle but firm. Thank you for telling me, Elena. What you've been through is incredibly difficult, and I'm so sorry you've had to carry this alone for so long. But you don't have to anymore. We'll make sure you get the help you need, and we'll support you every step of the way. For the first time, Elena felt that she wasn't alone. She looked up, meeting Miss Thompson's eyes, and saw understanding there, not judgment. The counselor's calm, steady presence made her feel safe, a feeling she had almost forgotten existed. In the days that followed, Miss Thompson guided Elena through the process of seeking help. They reported the abuse to Child Protective Services, and Elena was connected with a therapist who specialized in trauma. Each step was terrifying, but with Miss Thompson's support, Elena found the courage to keep moving forward. Her voice, once silenced by fear and shame, began to grow stronger. Word spread quickly in the community about the investigation, and soon, the townspeople were buzzing with shock and disbelief. Her father's arrest shook the small town, but for the first time, Elena didn't feel the need to hide. The initial days were difficult, whispers followed her, and she felt the weight of people's stares, but each time she felt overwhelmed, she reminded herself that she had done the right thing. She was breaking free. Elena's journey was far from over, but as she walked through the halls of her school, her head held high for the first time, she felt a new sense of strength. The fear that had once controlled her was beginning to fade, replaced by a growing determination to reclaim her life. She had found her voice, and she was learning to use it, not just for herself but for others who might be suffering in silence. Months that followed, Elena continued to attend therapy, walking through the pain and learning to trust herself. Her courage inspired others, and soon, people in her community began to reach out, offering words of support and solidarity. She started attending a support group, where she met others who had experienced similar hardships. Together, they shared their stories, drawing strength from each other's resilience and knowing that they were not alone. Looking back, Elena knew the journey had only just begun. Healing would take time, and there would be days when the weight of her past would feel overwhelming. But now, with her newfound courage and a support system she could rely on, she knew she was stronger than the darkness she had endured. Her story was no longer one of silence and pain, but of resilience, healing, and the power of finding one's voice. Please subscribe for more if you enjoy these folktale stories. Thank you.